Let's bring in Sami Abu Shahada, who's a Palestinian-Israeli member of the Knesset for the Joint List and leader of the Balad Party. He joins us now via Skype from Jaffa. Good to have you with us, sir. What are your thoughts on this flag rally day?
Hello, Adrian. I think we should put the whole scene into context. We are talking about a society which is celebrating occupation of another people, Adrian. I think this is very dangerous, what's happening. This is very fast deterioration of the majority of the Jewish population in Israel into fascism. We were warned by one of the most important scholars on fascism, Professor Ze'ev Sternhell, from the Hebrew University a few years before, that this is the direction that the Israeli society is heading to. We were also warned by important Jewish intellectuals like Professor Yeshayahu Leibovich after the 1967 war that the occupation, one of its results will be this very fast deterioration of the Israeli society morally. And this is what we are seeing. We are seeing dangerous, extreme people celebrating the occupation of another people. But we are not just talking about small marginal groups. We are talking about extreme groups that are supported by the Israeli government and defended by the Israeli police and security forces, which means that also the Israeli government sees this act as a legitimate act.
Do you think then, given all of that, that we could see a repeat of last year's violence today?
I really hope we will not deteriorate to that level of violence. We are, as victims of the Israeli violence and occupation, we don't want to see this violence, because what usually happens is that the Palestinian people pays very high price of the Israeli aggression and of the Israeli violence. What we want to see, we want to see the international diplomatic important work that wants to stop these kinds of scenes and want to stop the Israeli occupation, this impunity that we are seeing lately, with the way people are dealing differently, mainly with what happened now with the Russian aggression and occupation of Ukraine. We are seeing two different worlds. We are seeing one world that cares about people who lives in Europe and thinks that in Europe there should be no occupation, but simply don't care about the Palestinians who have been under occupation for decades. We are suffering from daily Israeli terrorist and violent acts all over, not just what we are seeing with this flags issue, Adrian. You can see what's happening daily, on a daily basis. There are people killed in the West Bank. Gaza has been sieged for nearly 2 decades now. You are seeing the Judaization of Jerusalem on a daily basis. We are seeing the continuous process of ethnic cleansing all over Palestine, including for Palestinians who are citizens of the state of Israel, mainly this group that is living in the southern parts of the state, the Bedouins in the Negev desert. So we are seeing all this, and nobody is trying to stop Israel from doing all these kinds of violent activity all the time towards Palestinians.
So where should this international pressure be coming from?
From all the states who see themselves as democratic states and do care about the human rights. And in the last 2 years, Adrian, there have been 5 different reports published from a very important NGOs. One of them was an Israeli human rights NGO, B'Tselem, that struggles against the Israeli occupation. But then we had another very important report from the Human Rights Watch, from Amnesty International, from the Law Human Rights Clinic in Harvard University, and from the UN. If all these groups are seeing Israel as an apartheid state, what is the world waiting for? Why aren't they dealing with Israel the way an apartheid regime should be dealt with? Israel could not be continued to be dealt with as a democracy when the whole world, anyone who is checking this state, is seeing it as an apartheid regime. They cannot continue dealing with Israel as a legitimate member in the democratic states. There are a lot of things could be done, but there should be, first of all, a decision that Israel must stop being above the international law. It should be dealt with like any normal other state in the whole world.
Good to talk to you, sir. As always, many thanks indeed. Sami Abu Shahada there.
Thank you, Adrian.
In Jaffa.